Hey, it's me, I'm live, and this is going to be a video on natural dreadlocks do's and don'ts. As I've mentioned, there are many people who consider natural neglect, freeform to be this way or that way. We all have slightly different definitions of what constitutes natural dreadlocks, I guess. So this is just me and my advice based on my subjective and personal journey. If it's of use to anyone, please use my advice, but don't take it as something that's written in stone. It's far from it, because I don't have your hair, I don't have your circumstances, I don't have your life, I have mine. And for the past decade or so, I've been growing these natural dreadlocks. So I think I do have one or two things to say on the matter. Let's get started. I'm going to go do's and don'ts, which are two sides of the same coin. Let's start. Do think it over. If you are going to start the neglect natural freeform method and you've thought it over, then go for it. But I do urge you to think it over. Take some time, do some research. Think of your hair. Think of your circumstance, of your age to a degree, and where you're at. Is it possible? Is it feasible? Can you see into the future a little bit and see if you'll be able to actually get this done, if that's what you want? You should think it over and not do it on a whim. Doing things on a whim can be very powerful. The thing is, with neglect dreadlocks, natural dreadlocks, you may make the decision on a whim, but then it's a lifetime of watching them grow and evolve. And if you are impatient, and if you know that you change, and move around a lot, and are very prone to changing your appearance, it could be something that you will get tired and sick of relatively quickly. So you should think it over. Do not overthink it. We tend, human beings, I mean, to put people on pedestals and to take a lot of people's thoughts and opinions and judgment into account. And even though you should probably take some of that into account, because you're living in the world and you have friends, you have family, you have a partner maybe, and you have people around you, you have a job with people, most likely. So you need to think it over, but not overthink it. Do not overthink it. Don't put anyone or anything's, don't put anything or anyone's opinion on a pedestal. You feel free to take counsel and advice from others. Ultimately, it's your decision. Moving on. Do let them do their thing. Do not mess with them. Two sides of the same token. Again, natural neglect, freeform dreadlocks are precisely that. They grow naturally. They form on their own by neglect. You don't touch them. You don't do anything to them other than wash them, which I'll get into right now. But don't mess with them. Don't think that, oh, I need to stop this from kinking up and going to the side. And don't be put out by the way this looks. And I'm going to get into the ugly stage a bit later in the video. So do their thing. Do not mess with them. Let them be. That's how they form. The healthiest and most natural dreadlocks form when you let them be and you don't mess with them. That's the whole point of natural neglect freeform dreadlocks. They form on their own through neglect naturally. And if you have other people telling you, oh, you should do this, you should do that, again, don't overthink what other people are saying. Even if you're talking to someone who has dreads down to the floor, if they're telling you something that you feel is not, not for you, and if you do whatever they say, you would consider that to be messing with them too much, don't do it. Go with what you feel is right. Take other people's advice, but ultimately it's your decision. Do wash them. Do not cover them up when they're wet or damp. Do wash them means keep them clean. Cleaner hair locks up faster. Cleaner hair manages to, well, basically manages to shrink and lock up quicker, simply because it doesn't have an additional layer of products or oils or I don't know what. Your scalp, more often than not, will release adequate amounts of sebum, of natural body oil, from the scalp to the hair to maintain them and keep them looking good. Also, this depends on, the climate and what other products you use and your diet. So wash them, keep them clean. Do not cover them when they're damp or wet. This is a recipe for dread rot. There are a couple of I have a few dreads, and I'll make a separate video on this. I have a few dreads that I am certain 100% that if you were to cut it in the middle and look, you would see a center or some kind, maybe not a center, but you would see some kind of dread rot in there. And if not rot, then some discoloration. Why? Because there was a time when I did things wrong on my way to doing them right. I have video on dreadlock maintenance. I'll link it down there or in the card. And basically, there were times where I used too many essential oils. There were times when I used too much apple cider vinegar or too much baking soda. There were times when I rinsed or washed my hair too often or not often enough. And I think right now I do have a handle on it, but for the first, I don't know how long, months, you know, until I got into my routine, and even that sometimes changes with the seasons, there were times when I had to cover them up or put them in a ponytail, right? To tie them back, whatever it is, when they were slightly damp. I think this caused damage to the dreadlocks overall. So I don't know if you may have to reevaluate your drying process, because drying dreadlocks takes a long time. And I recently saw a video on how to dry dreadlocks, and I will also link it down there or put it in a card. It has some advice and some actual demonstrations of what that person considers to be the best ways to dry the hair. So take a look at that. Do cultivate a relationship with your dreads. These things, if you're growing them naturally, and more specifically, if you're growing them for spiritual reasons or reasons of, mental fortitude or physical fortitude, because it empowers you, or or gives you some sort of confidence, it's quite possible. So if you cultivate a natural and healthy relationship with your hair, you know its own do's and don'ts, then it means that your locks will be much healthier in the long term. Enjoy the natural neglect freeform process. Enjoy it. Take pleasure in the ugly stage, as people call it. In times where you just get out of bed and it looks like a train wreck, go for it. Embrace it. If you need to cover your hair, if you want to cover your hair, I covered my hair for a long time at the beginning, for different reasons. One of them was I didn't want to attribute anything significance to it. I just wanted it to do its thing. As long as I know the significance, that was enough for me. To some extent, that's still perfectly the truth. I do consider my dread journey to be significant for me. It may not be significant for anyone else. That's fine. So do cultivate a relationship with your hair, because it means that overall you'll have a healthier, natural, and more fruitful and bountiful dreadlock journey. If you take, different comments and things people say, oh, you should do this, you should do that. If you take everything into account and everything under advisement, and you do whatever people tell you to do, especially with your hair, the chances that your dreads will, make it through that is not great, because you'll be feeling very bad. But on the other hand, if you cultivate a relationship with your hair, passive, active, whatever you want to call it, something where you say, this is my hair, it's part of my body, and this is how I want to do it, because this is what I want to do with my hair. That's it. That's all you need to know. That's the kind of relationship that I'm talking about. Nothing past that. Enjoy your newfound freedom of not having to maintain, not having to worry what people think, and not having the responsibility of my hair needs to look this way or that way. It needs to look however it looks. That's part of the beauty of this process. So do cultivate this relationship with your hair, but do not get overly attached to them. I attribute, like I said, great spiritual and physical significance to my dreadlocks, but I do understand the fact that it's just hair. It's part of my body. It's physical, material, external. I could, if and I've mentioned this in previous videos, if I wake up bald tomorrow for whatever reason, I would still be true to myself, and I would still, and my dreadlocks, I've been growing them for quite a while, and they are a part of me, even if they're not on my head. Now, I haven't gone through this. I don't know if that's actually the case, but the effect that my dreadlocks have had on me and on my conduct and my spiritual living, that's something that cannot be taken away from me, even if the hair itself is cut off. And this also has its roots in scripture, but I won't get into that now. Remember that it's just hair. Do get attached to them. Do not get overly attached to them, because then you get into a kind of paradox. You don't want your life to be run by your hair. At some point in my life, I was making certain decisions spiritually and in my faith and my religion, and some of these decisions were based on my dreadlock journey. And my father at some point told me, hey, listen, aren't you attributing too much to your hair? Aren't you putting too much stock into your hair? And I thought about it, because that's a great question. And I told him eventually, yes, I absolutely am putting a lot of stock by my hair because I attribute great significance to it. I realize it's physical and material and external. It will also decay and die with the rest of my body, or it can be actually cut off, all that. And I still attribute great significance to it because the journey itself has taught me a lot about myself and about my spirituality, my religion, my faith, and where the hair ties into that. I agreed with him that I should not put too much stock by hair alone. But when it's this kind of journey, don't be afraid of cultivating that relationship with your dreads. It's not just hair. On the other hand, it is just hair. I think it's what the hair teaches you, if you let it, what the journey teaches you that is paramount, not the actual physical presence of the hair in your life. It's just hair. This was long-ish, I think. These are my quick do's and don'ts. Quick, I mean it's only 4 or 5 of them. There are many more do's and don'ts, but like I said, these are my do's and don'ts. If they help you, if you find value here, that's wonderful. If not, take it under advisement, but do what you want. This is the cornerstone of any positive, I suppose, spiritual journey. It's you going with who you want. It's your life. Don't live it for anyone else but you. Again, you can take other people and places and circumstances under advisement, but only take it under advisement and make a choice on your own. Take counsel from anybody that means something to you or from strangers who may offer it. But don't feel like you must do this, you must do that. Your natural neglect freeform journey is precisely that, yours and no one else's. Let's have a wonderful day. I think if there's more to say, and there's always more to say, I will be probably making another do's and don'ts video down the line. Don't know if I will, don't know if I won't. I can see how I probably will. There's just so much to say, ironically, about something which requires such little maintenance. Oh well, let's have a good one.